So, retrospective look at England-Argentina. I didn't have a chance to watch the game live. I was at a wedding. I was kind of a little bit glad walking up with the build up to the game. As I've said in previous videos, I thought Argentina would thrash England. Not sure I wanted to watch it live and watch England's hopes of the World Cup dissipate within the first week. But as we all know now, that's not how it turned out. I don't know what I was expecting before watching the game. All the news articles I see flashing up, all the messages I have from my friends and family in terms of England's performance made me believe that England had found some kind of inspiration, or their game planning was working finally and they looked like world beaters. But for those over here in England and those that watch the game, I think the English media is getting a little bit out of hand with what happened here. I think England looked a lot better. You could tell straight from the off defensively, they looked a little bit more organised, a little bit more energetic, more cohesive. They knew it was the time to perform because now's the World Cup. But Argentina were awful. Like, they defeated themselves by every stretch of the imagination. Argentina got dominated the scrum, set piece all over the place. Every time I felt like they were getting into an attacking position on the field, there was a knock-on or a silly error, or there was a penalty in their own half that was easily avoidable. Argentina really did not turn up to the races today whatsoever, and it seems to be a trend in this week one that a lot of the tier 1 nations have turned up. The ones with expectations, ones that have played very well up until this point, have all underperformed. And I think this is a real... I don't know, I'm not inside all of these camps, but if I had to take a swing and a guess, so take this with a pinch of salt, the psychology of these teams, especially the ones that are kind of up and coming, and a lot of people are saying now it's their time to perform, the pressure's probably got to them. I mean, have a look at all the tier one nations so far, right, that have high expectations. France, New Zealand, Scotland, South Africa. I didn't watch the Australia game, so I can't talk about that. But all of these teams and Argentina that are tier 1 nations with great expectations, not all of them were firing on all cylinders. I guess the only real exception is South Africa, but they didn't play the best they possibly could do. But they have a general, I think, a much more enclosed ecosystem of their kind of team than all the other teams do to the media. And maybe it's a sports psychology thing. Maybe the pressure gets to these teams when it comes to actually performing because they've seen the hype. I mean, this social media age these days, it's impossible for them not to see what's in the news, etc. So a part of me wonders of whether that's what it is. I'm not going to say it's like a fact, like I saw it on the pitch, like you don't know what's going on. It's just a theory I have. But yeah, Argentina were not good in any way, shape or form. England did look markedly improved, and they did seem to make some small changes to their game planning that I think made a big difference in this game. So what were those? The kicking game, for one. And I'm not talking about the drop goals. We'll talk about those later. However, the kicking game was tailored differently. And I noticed this particularly with box kicks coming from the scrum half. Typically, box kicks coming from the scrum half from England, from the warm-up games and some of the games in the Six Nations as well, a lot of these box kicks were designed to not go for a large distance, stay and play, and go for competition in the air. And you do that because you think there's a chance of getting the ball back. All too often we've seen with England, they don't compete properly. They either give a penalty away when they try and compete, or the opposition takes the ball, and then the opposition are in England's half with chaos, and they can break away and score a try. England-Argentina, what England did instead with these box kicks is they kicked more for distance and they tried to get it out into touch. And this really benefited them. I mean, for me, England, they have, I'd say maybe 1 or 2 forwards that can compete in the high ball for jumping up for it, and 1 fullback who is a very, very good in the high ball, but 1 player in the backs who's really a specialist of getting into the high ball and competing. So this change of tactic was welcome for me. I think it made a big difference because England's lineouts and our scrums and our set pieces in general were our strength in this game. Will they be strengths in further games? I think for the group stages, the answer is probably yes. But when we get into, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, if we get into the knockout stages and we play teams with stronger packs and the set piece is probably going to be a lot more competitive. So maybe this doesn't work. I'm thinking in particular if we ever face Ireland, France, South Africa, and probably New Zealand, then maybe trying to play for the set piece and compete at that may not work as well. However, in this game it did work, and it was really tailored for what was seen in front of England. So that was cool to see. Talking about the drop kicking, as I believe George Ford said, this was always a tactic from the beginning of the game. It was in the game plan, and it was what was always in there. And that's really cool to hear. Watching England coming up to the World Cup, one of the big issues that I think they've had is red zone efficiency. Now, this is a very American catchphrase. So for those of you that don't know what red zone efficiency is, how I see it in rugby, get within inside the 22, convert into the opposition 22, and be able to convert that into points. And England, I think, have not been great with that. I've talked about it in the warm-up games that they need a more mobile pack to make sure that they have better clearing out, and that will open up their attacking game for where they can make line breaks, etc. But instead of trying to whip the forwards into shape to do that better, which they were, to be fair, in this game, they've decided to just take a weakness of their game and mitigate it by doing drop goals. And this is why I was personally excited about Steve Borthwick becoming England coach. Not because he would install an exact game philosophy and that's how everyone's going to play, but he is good at recognizing what a team's strength is and what its weaknesses are, and how to maximize the strengths and paper over the cracks and the weaknesses. I'll be honest with you, I think maybe I felt Borthwick was out of his depth coming into international rugby. That's what we've seen. He hardly won any games since he's been in charge, but when I've been watching him at Leicester fan myself, this was a great strength of his. He was great at recognizing what the strengths in the team were and making the team philosophy based around that, rather than saying, this is the way we're going to play and you're going to fit what I want you to do. Otherwise, well, it's my way or the highway. And I think this was a game showing Steve Borthwick's talents in terms of the decision to go for drop kicks, trust the set piece, etc. So positive signs for sure. Ben Kay, who I think is underrated as a pundit, really made a good point that I think was very pertinent, is that England have looked good because they've not had to attack. They've not had to show their attacking forte. They haven't had to show anything overly complicated in that regard. And because because Argentina have shot themselves in the foot so many times in this game, they've been made to look better. So, hey, it's very positive. Don't get me wrong, but I am in no way getting carried away with this England performance. For me, England get exciting if they manage to get into the group stages and they beat someone who I think is a competitor. I mean, let's have a look at the rest of the games that England have got in the group stages. Japan, Chile, Samoa. Chile and Japan could put up some fight. English sport is known for, playing the opposition in front of you and lowering your standard if you play someone who is of less talent than you. It's just how it goes with England sport. So those could go pear-shaped. Samoa, probably more competitive, gave Ireland a game, and they could throw a spanner in the works for sure. But even if England played the same way they do today and they beat all those teams comfortably, still not excited. Going to the group stages, if you replay Fiji, you play Wales, you play Australia, and you play well, and you beat them, maybe I get a bit excited. But it's really not going to be until the semi-finals, if even England get to that point, where I'd get any excitement over this team so far. So, real positive. I don't want to take anything away from it, but from what I've been seeing in English media and what people are saying, that finally this is England playing the way they need to be, let's just hold our horses. This is not the performance that's going to completely change my mind about them. But more positive for sure. Much better energy, tactics better, more tailored for the players that you have and the situation in front of you. So lots of positives. Let's go through some notes here. Okay, so obviously the yellow card and the red card were a big aspect of this game. And I will preface this by preface. I will preface. What I'm going to say here is that by the letter of the law, I think that both the red card and yellow card were correct in the decision making. Tom Curry does make contact with the head, and the yellow card was a man jumping up for the ball in a slightly reckless way, but he was in no way targeting George Ford in the head. So by the letter of the law, that is exactly what it should be. However, I've always been a proponent in saying that the law needs to be changed, that there's some stuff in it that doesn't quite make sense to me. And if you rewatch it, I think any impartial fan, maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's because I'm biased, would say that the Tom Curry one was a lot less reckless than the challenge on George Ford for charging down the kick. If you look at what's happening with Curry when he's coming through, he's having to stay upright because Argentina have done this classic tactic now that a lot of teams do. No, it's no discredit to them. I'm not blaming them for it. It's a copycat sport, and if it works, it works. But they set up a lot of guys in front of the guy who's trying to take the ball under the high ball. Tom Curry's fighting his way through them. If he goes low there, someone's just going to push him to the floor. He needs to keep his height a little bit to wade through the players. And by the time he gets through, he's already face to face with the opposition. And by accidental collision, he hits heads. Now, yes, it's a red card to the letter of the law. He's gone too high, etc. But for me, I don't know. I think I would much rather see that would just be a penalty to Argentina and we get on with the game and it doesn't go down this road that it has led to with him getting a red card and sent off. You know, I just don't see it personally. It's non-malicious. He's gone too high, penalised for it and go back. Whereas something that the other challenge that we have with Argentina, which is a yellow card, a guy that goes too recklessly up in the air. He's obviously gone straight into George Ford, trying to charge down a kick. There's no real mitigation for it because he could charge down slightly across George Ford so he doesn't hit him, but he purposely puts his hip into him. That's a yellow card all day of the week, every day of the week. Yet it is something that's probably not malicious. I think that's an overly exaggerated word for the situation. What word should I use? Intentional? Something that's more intentional. That's given a yellow card rather than and you compare that's a yellow card and you compare that Tom Curry's, which I think's a lot more incidental, is a red card. I don't know. It doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem right to me. It just doesn't seem like the right calls are made for the right situation. You know, just my opinion. Let me know what you think. So another point here is that Borthwick, I think, you know, I've given him credit for the tactics, etc. But I think something has to be said that 3 really good players for England have basically been put in because they've been forced to be put in. I mean, actually, I'd say 4, sorry. Alex Mitchell, who's, you know, he should have started at 9 and he had a great game. His kicking was great. Jonny May, maybe not so incidental within the game, but I think he's a great winger. Ben Earl, great turnover machine, played very, very well. And obviously George Ford. These 4 players, they needed to have things happen within the squad for them to play. I'm talking about Alex Mitchell, obviously JVP, he's got his injury. Jonny May, so obviously Anthony Watson's got his injury. Ben Earl, obviously that's been if only getting a red card, and George Ford is probably because Owen Farrell got his red card. These things all have had to happen for the right selection rather than Borthwick picking the right players. I think that's only fair to say. You know, it's kind of fortunate that he's been forced down the avenue that these players should be playing. And of course, let's not forget that Dan Cole has also been forced to play because of injuries. And where would England be without that, the superstar at the tight head prop position? We all know he's the right tight head for the job. Let's not get confused, all right? No one's better, okay? And yeah, the final thing to note here for me is that in the commentary, Hugo Monnier on the English commentary said that at the end of the game, Argentina had 13 handling errors and 13 penalties against them. You play any other tier 1 nation further down the line, and that's just not going to happen, you know? Positive. Let's not take the positives away. It makes England's chance of getting through to the knockout stages much higher, but there's still a lot of room for improvement and a lot of things to do. And yeah, I think St. George Ford has to start at fly half from now on. I think even when Farrell comes back, doesn't matter what you do with Farrell. He's either on the bench or he's going to be playing at 12. I think there's an argument for both. I think the argument for me is more keep him on the bench because you don't want him dominating and telling everyone what to do because George Ford has it under control. Maro Tuilagi had a fantastic game, I think, and Marchant is the right choice at 13. So I think that's it, really. Good game. Like watching it retrospectively. There's the benefit of having it on terrestrial TV for the World Cup, so I can go back and watch them. And yeah, I won't get my hopes up just yet. But that's me signing off for this game.
Illuminati confirmed.